Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because it is certainly good to be here. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is Mud City. Yeah! Okay, so we're continuing with the arches. Well, with the arch, rather. I hope everybody's doing well today. So when last we left off, we were at the wheat and the fascies, and that went in very interesting directions, I thought. And the potential for it to continue to go in interesting directions is definitely there, because it definitely comes back around, and we'll probably end up talking more about it later on. So now we've had a reset where there is, like I said, I felt this meant like sort of abundance and control, right? And that the double axes, were arches, as it were, and two arches create a circle. Very interesting sort of symbology there. And so we're going to move on to this one. And this one was a confusing one to me, although I believe I figured it out. Now, there was, I mentioned in the original video that there were triangles over here, but what didn't catch my attention was what was going on in his arm over here. And I don't know why I didn't notice that at the time, but I didn't. And I didn't know what these upside-down arches were. And it was suggested, I think, a secret subscriber suggested that these were the holes of a boat. And so maybe there was some flood symbolism in here. So I did a search, I searched, men with, boats and holes and hole ribs, and I did all kinds of searches trying to find any sort of symbolism, and I couldn't find anything. And I was, looking at this, and so I said, but there's maybe there's something I'm missing, because this one doesn't look so clear, and I knew that there was another picture from the other arch, right? And so you could tell completely different artists in here, definitely, but given the same pattern to do, right? And though this one is even more worn, this is when I started to look around at what was going on in the picture a little bit more. And it made me sort of think the way this guy was sitting, and he had his hand up. I'm like, oh my God, he's sitting at his desk in front of a computer. He's clicking a mouse, right? And so I thought that was kind of funny, but I didn't really think much more of it than that, because who knows what it was. And then I noticed this over here, and I was like, well, wait a minute, this now kind of is, this is looking like an 18. So I'm like, is this a date? And so that made me think of the other one, right? And this, and I looked and I saw that, and I was like, oh my God, that says 1844, another date, something to go looking after. And then I looked at this one, and just bouncing back and forth, it made this picture stand out even more. And I remembered, it came to me from in the B&O Railroad Museum video. I mentioned that the first Morse code message was received, I think it was, at Mount Clair Station there. And so it hit me that, oh my God, maybe he's doing the Morse code. And these are telegraph wire lines here. 1844, they were setting these things up, and so I thought that was really interesting, So I wanted to find out what was going on in Baltimore in 1844, right? It was going to bring me to Morse code, right? But it didn't. It brought me here first. To the 1844 Democratic National Convention was held in Baltimore. But that's not the only national convention that was held in Baltimore. The 1844 Whig rally was held here as well. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about both, just briefly, because they were the other significant events that happened in Baltimore at the time. And so, like I said, I'm not going to go that deep into it. think it's interesting that it was held at an Oddfellows Hall. You know? Let's see, what does it say about the Oddfellows? Established in 1831. A fraternal organization. Yeah. Under this, at the Seven Stars Tavern, there's symbolism there too. It grew rapidly, and on January 15th, 1830, the Grand Lodge of Maryland unanimously resolved to procure a suitable lot of ground in the center of the city for an Oddfellows Hall. Procession was formed at the Exchange Building and marched to Trinity Church, where an oration was delivered by Ridgely and a choir performed a musical selection. It's a big deal. The hall was described as a new and handsome brick house. You know, the upper floor housed a grand ballroom known as the Egyptian Saloon. Are you kidding me? In 1844, Edgar Allan Poe lectured there on American poetry, but he was witheringly severe about Rufus Griswold. Oh, a guy attacks Poe's work. It was the Egyptian in 1844. The Egyptian Saloon was the largest meeting room in Baltimore, and as such was chosen as the venue of that year's Democratic National Convention. So that's really interesting. But the room was a poor choice. It was too small, and its acoustics were poor. And the gallery was described as black as the whole of Calcutta. Jesus. That's got to be some sort of horrible insult. What does that even mean? The whole of Calcutta. Where's my mouse? There it is. The small prisoner dungeon of Fort William. See, how would this even be, like, how would this be common knowledge? How would that be a like an insult that would carry weight in Baltimore in 1844? That doesn't make any sense to me. Interesting. So it was Tudor. It was Tudor Gothic style. I caught that real quick on Gay Street, which is near, and yay, I got to go to the brewery building today. Did not take pictures. It was a quick driving tour, but I actually got to go to the Weisner brewery building today, and it is really impressive up close. I can't wait to get back there again. But I'm guessing this was probably pretty close. They were probably pretty close to each other. They demolished it in 1899, of course, so there might be pictures out there. That might be a nice aside to do someday, but interesting that that's where it was. You know, I'm not going to get into the politics of it. It's just interesting that that was there. And then I wanted to read, well, let's talk about the Whig convention for a second too, because the Whig convention, I just have these letters brought up. Maybe if I continue down. Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much about the Whig National Convention either, but it was, again, interesting that the two of the political parties, because I'm sure there were more at that time. I think there was probably a Republican and a Federalist, and who knows how many other. At least they pretended to have options back then. Excuse me. But there was another interest. There was a more interesting article about this time in Baltimore, and it was this one, the Skinner Family Papers. And this man wrote a letter home. He had come to Baltimore for the convention, right? And so I'm going to read this guy's letter, a little bit of it anyway. All right, so it was May 3rd, 1844. Dear Father, I take advantage of this, almost the first leisure hour since my arrival here, to write to you as I promised. The city, since last Monday, has been crowded. On my arrival, not a corner was to be found in any of the hotels where a newcomer could find even a pallet. Many boarding houses, not known to travelers, sent in their names to the committee of reception, stating how many they could accommodate, or rather store away. In company with 20 other North Carolina delegates, I was sent by the committee to one of those where we slept 8 in a room. This morning, very many have left the city, and John and I have found a room at the Exchange Hotel. I suppose. So he's talking about how crowded the city was, and it gets better. A body of 1,500 joined the Pennsylvania delegation after the counting. It is estimated that 25,000 men joined in the procession, and near 200,000 spectators filled the streets through which it passed. 3 miles of houses had every window crowded with ladies waving handkerchiefs and flags and throwing wreaths upon the passing crowd. We arrived at Canton, a large field 5 miles from the place where the procession started. The prize banner was presented to the state of Delaware. And so I want to talk about those numbers for a second. I brought up my population history of Baltimore from 1790 to 1990. All right, and so 1844, we're looking at just, maybe 100 and we split the difference here for the 10 years. I mean, good Lord, look at that jump. 67,000 people, so even 130, so it's certainly close to double of the population descended on Baltimore. And so I brought up a map of Baltimore City. This is from 1851. So 7 years after that. All right, and you see how developed it is. And we're going to go over some of the fun features that I've talked about, like, because here's Mount Clair Station Depot. It looks very similar. But then you look and at, where was Camden Yards? Shoot, I lost Camden Yards. I lost Camden Yards. It was there. Okay, so I have this map. This is from 1851, and to show you the size of Baltimore and the type of crowds that we're talking about here, and the Whig convention was somewhere down Calvert Street down here. It was down in this area here. And the interesting thing about this map, so I want you to imagine 200,000 people, almost double the entire city population. Where were they? Sleeping 8 to a room? What were they sleeping on? The floor? These delegates and stuff? I mean, the numbers just seem so crazy. And I think that also, like, this is in a letter home, and this letter could be, a plant, one of those things, you want to talk about fake history, maybe this is a little bit of that fake history. Letters like these, so residents in the city say this convention surpasses that of the 1840, very far. At least 60,000 strangers here. I wanted to show this. This was interesting. Henry Clay's slogan was "Mind your business." What an unbelievable political slogan. I would have voted for him. And who knows, maybe someday I'll have to get into Henry Clay. So I just thought that was interesting. The number of people they say descended on Baltimore in the first week of May, 200,000, and it just seems so unrealistic to me, because when you look at old pictures of Baltimore, and the oldest pictures I could find, like the 1860s, where is everybody? I mean, because there was 100,000 already here, at least. They don't show very much, when I search images of pictures of Baltimore in the 1860s, You don't get much. And if I were to go forward, and everybody knows that people have been looking on it, I'm not the first person to try to do this. Everybody else seems to be able to do it a whole lot better than me. There are old pictures of all these old cities with no pictures, with no people in them from around this time frame. So where were all those people in the 1840s that this letter is writing about? Very interesting. But again, as the medallion shows, and what this chapter is really about, I think, is Morse code, because I couldn't believe, I was so grateful to make that connection. Yes. All right, so it was the Baltimore-Washington telegraph line opened in 1844, and that changed communication forever, at least according to the modern narrative, right? And that's a pretty big deal, right? It was the first long-distance telegraph system, and I think it's interesting that the medallion had those telephone pole wires, and they were sagging, brand new. They were sagging. It cost $30,000 they gave Samuel Morse. And Samuel Morse is a very interesting character, and I'm going to look into him a little bit. But I thought this was interesting. Morse originally decided to lay the wire underground by using a special cable-laying plow Cornell had developed. So they were laying cable for something already by the 1840s before, right? Because clearly this Ezra Cornell had the plow. It was made. Morse asked him to use it. What was Cornell using it for? I can't go there. But Cornell's plow was pulled by 8 mules, and it cut a 2-inch wide, 20-inch deep, track till you laid a pipe in, and then you reburied the pipe. But they stopped after 15 kilometers of wire because the line was failing. And so he looked to England for inspiration. I guess they had a slightly different style of telegraph, and they were using poles. And so, right, in 1844, chestnut poles, 7 meters, 23 feet high, spaced 200 feet apart, 500 poles. And they were insulated with beeswax, resin, linseed oil, and asphalt. And this is a test of the still incomplete line, and this is where the Whig Party is important. More so than, I guess, its politics, the way its politics would relate to today. But who knows what happened in there. When the news of the Whig Party's nomination of Henry Clay for president was sent from the party's convention in Baltimore to the Capitol building. So, even before, almost 3 weeks before, a little more than 3 weeks before, the first public demonstration was done, a message was sent to the Capitol building. Uh-oh! That Clay guy's coming with his no-nonsense attitude. So it was demonstrated on May 24th, 1844. The old Supreme Court transmission, it said it was, maybe it was in another place. It was in the basement. They had to do the first one in the basement, which I thought was interesting. What hath God wrought, from the book of Numbers, whose phrase was suggested by Annie Ellsworth, whose husband was a supporter of Morse's and who knew Morse was religious. Yeah, Morse was very religious. Interesting that the telegraph line was in charge of the Postmaster General, Cave, which is an interesting first name, Cave. So let's find out a little bit about Morse, because he's kind of an interesting character. There he is, and they say this was from 1840, and to me that would be a really early photograph. I don't know. Look at the clarity and quality of that. He sat still for sure, right? But he was a handsome guy, right? And he look, there's his Morse code, ... right? I remember every pair of cheap walkie-talkies had the Morse code on the side. I could never figure out. But he was a painter. that was his initial thing. And I'm just going to try to go over this quickly because I don't want these. There's a lot of chapters to get through. And but he was the son of a pastor. He was a Calvinist, a supporter of the Federalists and Puritan tradition. Strong central government. He went to Yale, which is interesting. I wonder if he was a member of Skull and Bones. Who knows? But while at Yale, he attended lectures on electricity and was a member of the Society of Brothers in Unity. Oh, that looked kind of. What was that? It was a 4-year secret society at Yale. It used to be a debating. Look at this. So his secret society. This is the secret society you don't hear about all the time. Brothers in Unity. Who knows what nefarious deed? Let's check out the Brothers in Unity out of Yale for a second here. All right. Oh my God. References can be found throughout Yale's campus. See, gosh darn it, why didn't I look at this stuff when I actually lived in New Haven? It was the society was founded chiefly to combat existing class separation among literary societies. Prior to 1768, Yale freshmen were not received into any society. I mean, I don't know how this is. It doesn't seem like it was such a secret, operating under Masonic secrecy, in conjunction with the Linonia and the Colopian Society. They discussed scientific questions and gravitated towards literary pursuits. The society sought lofty places in science, literature, and oratory fields, as well as general intellectual improvement. Look at this. Between the years 1768, the founding father, look at the number of, look at this. Every president of the United States, with the exception of 2, has been in his cabinet. One of our members and the governor's chair of our own state has been filled for 20 years with Brothers in Unity. That's, I guess, Connecticut, maybe. So, good Lord, 26 valedictorians come from there. Interesting, no mention of the Skull and Bones in here, though. Actions as a secret society. From following the transfer of debate into Yale Union, it doesn't say when that happened. The societies continued their existence in secrecy. It's so secret now they don't even admit this one. So it was a brotherhood. How about that? Interesting. I didn't click on that before. What else can we find? This is a self-portrait he did in 1812. But where was he was Phi Beta Kappa with honors. There was, I wonder if I look at a different article on him because there's stuff that's not in here. Oh, here it is. So he went to England to meet the artist Benjamin West, who was the teacher of Pierce, was his name, right? Benjamin West taught all those portrait guys, the ones that worked in conjunction with the Carrolls to, create the paintings of the founding fathers and tell the story. And the 2 men set sail aboard the Libya. The Libris, I don't know. Maybe you can connect that if you wanted to. So Morse perfected his painting techniques, and so he was a painter. Interesting that he came to produce the telegraph, which is could be seen as the precursor to telling stories via radio and stuff. I mean, you could have told whatever story you wanted over that. you know, if someone could interpret the code on the other end. But I'm gonna go a little bit later. I did look through most of this briefly. So, you know, he was involved with the architecture of the new Capitol, and also interesting. So he painted Lafayette, you know, and the connections that could be made there. Of course, because like I said, everything went through Montclair. You know, Washington went through Montclair, and his right-hand man, you know, Tillman, you know, was in the painting with Washington and Lafayette, you know. In 1832, he caught a lecture on electromagnetism, which is interesting that in 1832 that stuff was happening in full swing. They were, you know, these lecturers were going around to different institutions. He fought hard to be the sole inventor of the telegraph, but it needed relays. It talks about the work that needed to be done to get it to go long distances. He got federal support. The government gave him money. So in May 1845, the Magnetic Telegraph Company was formed in order to build telegraph lines from New York to Philly, Boston, Buffalo, and to Mississippi. Interesting. there's a lot of stuff in between, you know, Philadelphia and Mississippi, you know. He had interesting political views. He was anti-Catholic, and this is what I want to show. This is what I was trying to get to. I'm going to have to do a lot of editing, I'm sure. You know, they say he was anti-Catholic, right? But I want to show something here. They make a point of that, but they show here, right? This is him later in life, 1866, right? And he's got all of these medals from all these. Look at the, you know, the medals worn from the Ottomans, right? Order of the Tower and Sword from Portugal, Order of the Dannebrog from Denmark, Order of the Cross of Isabella the Catholic, right? And he's wearing two of those. I just wanted to point out on the bottom row there's another one. So how anti-Catholic could he have been if he's receiving the Order of Isabella the Catholic and proudly displaying them in his picture? You know, again, history is, you know, not telling the truth by any stretch of the imagination. So interesting now that our story of the arch goes this way, and that this is the telegraph, and so technological advancement is part of the arch, part of the story of creation that they're putting forward. They're creating this technology, and in a major way, Baltimore is a part of it. You know, because look what they've done for the next one is the Beehive again, and you know, so you know, technological advancement. You know, you tie that in with the workforce, right? And the way things are going to improve going forward, or at least the way they want the narrative to go, that things are going to improve for the workforce and the hive and society in general based off of the introduction of this. And so I think that was an interesting connection to find that date and to tie it in with Morse code and see the way this arch story is developing. All right, so I'm going to call it, this was chapter 7, I guess, right? And so, you know, until the next one, please take care of yourselves and each other. And until the next one, cheers, guys.